Hey everybody, welcome to our DT sharing today.
Hi, good morning. So today we're in Mark 1.
Okay, and here I highlighted a couple verses already. And I was thinking about from verse 16, Jesus, he's starting his movement, right? He's calling his disciples, forming his group together, and it's going to be the beginning of his salvation plan. It's a huge spiritual movement, and he's here at the Sea of Galilee. And I thought that's kind of an odd place to pick your best of the best, right? And it's fishermen, and we know there are uneducated men and ordinary guys, fishermen, right? Blue collar workers. And this is not the place, they're not even spiritual powerhouses of any stretch of the imagination. And so it's an odd place for Jesus to begin. Like I thought in today's world, if you were to start a movement of some sort, you want the cream of the crop, the best of the best, and you'd be going to Harvard, MIT, Stanford, these top schools. But instead, we find Jesus coming to ordinary men. And I think that speaks to how God chooses to work. And I was thinking about the passage in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, in which it says, in verse 27, but God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. And I thought that's how God works, he takes ordinary people for his great work and he ennobles their lives. And I thought about this analogy that I heard before. And God is like the masterpiece. Right? He's the master artist, and we are supposed to be his masterpieces. But like any great masterpiece, like Michelangelo, when he created the statue of David or the Pieta, like how did he do that? He started with a lump of just marble, just a big piece of rock. But it's the master artist that takes that ordinary piece of rock and shapes it and molds it into becoming this great masterpiece. And I thought that's how God chooses, that's how God works. And when he sees us, we are this just like piece of marble, but God is at work in our lives. And if we're yielded to him, then he can actually do that work. And so these men, when they respond to the call to follow, that's what they end up becoming. They become the fathers of the church. And who knew then when they accepted that that's what they would become?
So in verse 17, the first thing Jesus says to them is, follow me. And I think I think it is kind of scary to think about what that entails, which is that, they needed to leave a lot of things behind in order to follow. And for these men, for Simon and Andrew, John and James, they left behind their nets. So that's their profession, fishing. And then it says they left their father, Zebedee, so it's their family, their parents. And so I was thinking, yeah, that's pretty intimidating. They left behind what was familiar. They left behind their profession. They left behind family. And but then it was because Jesus must have been that compelling, And I think it's interesting to note that, they weren't lame people that had nothing going for them. They actually had something to leave behind. I mean, all of us, it's the familiar and what we're used to, our comfort zone. Those are the things that they were willing to leave behind. And one thing I thought about was that, these are really important moments that we need in our faith journey. It's a defining moment, especially for these guys. And that's the same case for us too. It completely changes the trajectory of their lives. And that's, very clear, from being fishermen to becoming like the disciples and the apostles. And I was thinking about how, these moments are, huge transitions. A lot of them come up in big transitions of our lives where we're faced with these kind of fork in the moments and like a defining moment. And we don't know what following Jesus is going to entail when we first accept that invitation. But over the course of time, I think what we experience is that, wow, it's pretty like amazing. And I think that's what these men experienced. They didn't know what this was going to entail for them, leaving behind everything that was familiar and being a fisherman to finding themselves becoming the apostles, And so I think what's important is that, it was the obedience that led them to actually finding themselves to becoming the apostles of the early church.
Yeah, I think that's both of our stories. It's when we decided to obey, and that's when our lives really did change. And I was just talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and 27 years ago, we became friends at our church when we were freshmen, and just remarking about how our decisions back then have really shaped the trajectory of our lives. And who knew back then where we would be today and the kind of impact that we would have, not because we're so great or awesome, but because we just obeyed and as we followed and continue to obey. Because I think that's the other part of this passage, is that it's not just a one-time deal that we follow. It's a continual relinquishing to letting go of our nets and following, because at different points in our lives, different transitions, different things come up in which can hold us back and say, stay. And those things are not necessarily bad. They can be good things. But just like fishing wasn't bad, Jesus saying, but follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. There's a greater cause. And I think we all long for that and want that. And that's what Jesus is offering. And who knew that they would become the fathers of the early church and lead a movement that would change our world, turn our world upside down. And so I think that's just the invitation that Jesus offers to each of us each day. So.
Yeah, I think that on a related note, it's an invitation to relationship because it's a continual thing. It's not a one-time decision that happens. Of course, there is that significant one, first decision, but it's a daily thing because it's follow me. It's like a life of continuing every day to follow. You don't know where that next day is going to lead you, and so I think it's that invitation to relationship and to daily obedience and to following where Jesus calls you. So, Yep.
All right. That's it for today.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.